So if you've clicked on this video and you're a Final Fantasy XIV fan, you'll know the game is in a bit of a lull right now, a bit of a low spot, and it's not something I particularly want to dwell on, as I feel like there's enough of that on the internet. There's plenty of other videos that are negative towards the game that you can kind of go and watch, but I do just want to shed some light for the people who are either optimistic about the game, still enjoying it, or maybe even considering picking it up for the first time. Final Fantasy XIV has seen a lot of content from the base game, being A Realm Reborn, all the way through to the Dawn Trail expansion, which is the most recent, largest expansion in the game. And if I'm being honest with you, I've tried a lot of other MMOs over the years, many of which have been uploaded to this channel. I've taken breaks from 14, kind of swearing off that I was done, and yet Final Fantasy XIV still seems to be the game that I constantly come back to in amongst some others. As of the recording of this video, over multiple attempts and multiple play sessions, I've amassed nearly 1,300 hours of gameplay, and you know, that's not something I normally do in MMOs as someone who covers quite a few of them. I tend to just play for 80 to 100 hours and move on, but Final Fantasy XIV really got its hooks into me, and well, I kind of want to share why that is today. You see, with most MMOs, it's all about raids and loot, and that's pretty much your general rotation, but to me, I don't know, with 14 there was something a little bit deeper, something that just kind of kept me logging in for years. And I think if I'm being a realist and kind of taking a step back and trying to be as unbiased as possible here, I think one of the major reasons I've stayed with 14 is because I'm a long-term fan of the Final Fantasy franchise as a whole. I remember my first exposure to some of the early games from 7, 8 onwards, experiencing the summons for the first time, watching my dad summon Ifrit, Shiva. I just thought that the general fantasy, you know, the kind of fantasy trope of Final Fantasy was just incredible, and many of the cutscenes back then were just leagues and bounds above, you know, where they were time-wise. It really was a franchise that was ahead of its time. So I guess it's safe to say that my love for the Final Fantasy franchise came before any multiplayer experiences. It was mainly single-player adventures on old consoles back when memory cards were a thing, if you can kind of picture that, and, you know, just walking about the world, taking it in, random monsters popping in, huge epic boss battles and music. So that was my love for the FF franchise. Now, actually, before I stepped into 14, I had played some MMOs. I'd played like old school RuneScape, but 14 was very much the first proper MMO that I sunk my teeth into, and I'd actually picked it up when COVID was a thing. I was on furlough, nothing to do, much like many of you. I just wanted a game that I could just kind of lose myself in, pass some time in, and, you know, ultimately just push to the wayside when I was done with it, but that didn't really end up happening with 14, and it's kind of remained installed for the foreseeable future and basically the whole time that I've had it. I was actually well aware that 14 had launched all of those years ago in its sort of more primitive state before it got redone with A Realm Reborn, but it just wasn't really on my radar. I think the idea of playing a multiplayer Final Fantasy game just felt like chalk and cheese to me. It kind of felt like it wouldn't be the most immersive experience. You know, I'd have all these people running around, like, whilst I'm trying to interact with quests and get a bit chaotic, which to an extent it kind of is, but it has managed my expectations of the game a lot better than I thought it would. Outside of my sheer love for the FF franchise, I think something has to be noted here. One of the main draws to this game, at least for me, is the world. The whole idea of a cataclysmic event that has wiped away the old, so what would have been the old game that, you know, with a roundabout term, pretty much failed, and the world has been reborn anew, a realm reborn, and the idea that that event gets referenced in so many different parts of dialogue and with different NPCs, and it's become a part of the ecosystem, is something that I really, really, truly enjoy, and I feel like they've done a really, really good job of that. They could have just thrown it away as an event that happened some years ago and then never reference it again, and they didn't do that. They chose to really jump into and own what that event was. Outside of the calamity, the world actually feels pretty vibrant as well. There are plenty of people walking about, doing things. NPCs are kind of tending to things as you would expect them to in towns, conversing with each other. The world itself, albeit is not as meaningful in the open world as I would like it to be, it does feel alive, and the many components of the story that you play through over many patches and expansions only aids to that feeling, and that's something that I haven't really got from many other MMOs. The fact that you genuinely feel connected to the world through everything that you go through as the Warrior of Light, through every story choice that you make, and every, you know, set of pacing that happens, every story beat, every twist, every turn. It genuinely makes you look back on certain areas, certain NPCs, and think, wow, I remember when this happened. For example, you know, no spoilers, but watching Zero's arc is probably one of my favorites within the whole of the franchise. I just love that kind of story arc from this mysterious figure to someone that we genuinely fall in love with. Talking of the story, this is a really nice segue into my next point. I've seen the game's story over the many hours that I put into the game go through multiple arcs, and here's the thing for me, it's still, albeit at the moment a little bit rough, but it's still, for the main bulk of the story, the most consistent and well-written narrative that I think I've found in the gaming space, period, much more so in MMOs, to be honest. As far as the gaming sphere goes, I feel like Final Fantasy XIV's writing does fit in really, really well against some single-player RPGs too. What I've always really enjoyed is the story kind of lets you just go at your own pace. You can absorb as much as you want to absorb. If you're the sort of person that wants to kind of binge through it each patch, really absorb it all and then move out of the way and go and do other things, you can do that. Or you can take on a couple of quests at a time, go and do some side content, some raids, whatever you want to do, stop and fish for a while, go and craft, and then pace yourself. Depending on who you are as a player and what you want to do, I feel like 14 really caters for that quite well. Generally speaking, outside of what's going on right now with the kind of direction of the story, I feel like each new expansion and new chapter, it never really loses sight of the personal connections that you build with the NPCs. It always feels like you're going back to, old relationships, and you get to experience, witty remarks and different kind of social settings with the NPCs as you all grow together, and it starts to become and starts to feel much more like a family as you're going through the story. And of course, the more that you're invested, the more you care, and when those hard-hitting moments come, because trust me, they do come, they hit you really hard. And, that might seem like I'm just saying the same thing, but it really hurts. And, I'm not the sort of guy that gets emotional all the time when I'm playing games, but there's been a few moments where I'm sat back thinking, is someone cutting onions in here? Because this is getting rough. Another thing that I really enjoy about the story outside of the writing is the way that it introduces you to instance content in the form of dungeons or raids. There isn't just something that pops up saying, hey, you can go here now. You've actually got some sort of context, some narrative as to why you were there. Quite often you'll have a fully fledged backstory about why you're there in the first place, and then it's up to you to dig deeper if you want to. You can take as much away from this or as little as you want. This in itself stops any of the questions as to being like, well, what am I doing here? Why is this important? What are we looking for? Who are we looking for? That clarity to me was really, really important. Now, something I feel 14 still has the edge on to this day, over and above most MMOs, to be honest, is the class system, or I should say job system. The ability to quite literally pick any class that you want at any time and swap on the fly. You're not making alts all the time, having to worry about swapping in and out of characters. Now, whilst I will say there is a slight caveat to this, as much as you can pick any class, you won't necessarily find it easier to get best in slot gear for every one of those classes because of the weekly lockouts on currency. But that doesn't mean that you can't at least try all of the classes to, get a feel of what you like, what you enjoy. And there is so much to enjoy. Even though some of the classes have been dumbed down over the years in terms of their mechanics, they are, personally to me, still really enjoyable. And I do feel that a lot of the jobs in the game are very diverse from one another. That also goes for jobs outside of battle jobs. You've even got, of course, crafting jobs. Do you want to be blacksmithing one day or crafting furniture another day? Perhaps even spend the next few hours fishing. The choice is yours. You can really do whatever you want. And I feel like that's the beauty of 14. As much as you have a driven narrative, you've got signposted content, the game really kind of just lets you do what you want, and I've always really enjoyed that. I feel like unless you're someone that's pushing really high-end content, ultimates, savage raids, that sort of thing, the game never really punishes you for switching gears or switching jobs. It really gives you the flexibility to kind of do what you want to do. Now, when I joined the game, I was actually really impressed and kind of really shocked with the amount of battle jobs there were in the game. You've got your tanks, your healers, DPS, as you would normally expect in most games, but there's quite a few different additions to those particular profiles. Each one of the tanks plays out slightly differently. You've got warriors that absolutely destroy everything and don't need any more party members, and you've got dark knights that need everyone under the sun to stay alive. I'm really sorry for this, Dark Knights. The healer role is never something that I really thought I would jump into, but I've actually really enjoyed probably more than most other jobs. Playing White Mage initially was really fun, and then into Sage, which is a more sort of barrier shield focused playstyle, which I thought was really cool. I didn't really see myself in that role, but again, the flexibility of the job system has allowed me to kind of get a grasp and an understanding on what I enjoy. Quite a few of the DPS classes I've actually managed to get to a relatively high level. I personally really enjoy the Reaper class, and Dragoon is really enjoyable. Not to mention I really enjoy the flashy look of the Black Mage, although I will say that I have no idea what the rotations are. Unless you're a quantum physicist, I really don't get what buttons to press or how you even understand what happens with that job. But, you know, best believe I'm not leaving my ley lines to even find out. Outside of the jobs, and even outside of what you may see online with the many voices of the community, I do want to just say that most of the community, 95.66 recurring percent of the community, is really nice. People are just here to just chill, enjoy, role play, you know, help people along with what they're looking for, you know, whether it be help with quests, help with jobs, hunts, savages, ultimates, whatever. People are just here to have a good time, and ultimately this is a form of release. This is an extension of these people that they can't show in real life. Really start speaking to people. If you get into content, if you get into dungeons, say hello. Most people will say hello straight away, whether you're in PvP, whether you're in alliance raids, dungeons, out in the open world. Don't be afraid to just include yourself, because Final Fantasy XIV, for the most part, is really friendly. Sure, there are some toxic friendly people that will kind of pretend they're nice face value, but you're going to get that anywhere you go. For the most part, I have had genuinely really nice interactions in 14. In fact, one of my highlight moments when playing this game is actually when I used to play with my now in real life wife. We used to play it quite a lot together, and we even got married in the game, which is not a thing I even thought was possible. But yeah, we had a whole ceremony. We invited players to attend the wedding. We got to choose all the flowers and the decorations, and it was just really cool, and not something I would generally typically steer myself towards in most MMOs, but there you go. It's just part of the many reasons that the ecosystem of this game still works far better than most. Now, being someone that plays a lot of MMOs, you kind of get to experience not only the good, but also the bad, and a lot of the bad that comes from MMOs, particularly in the likes of Destiny, for example, which isn't a true MMO, it's more of an FPS, but it is a massively multiplayer online game. A lot of the negatives surrounding that franchise, especially Destiny 2, is the fact that a lot of old content gets cut straight out. And whilst Final Fantasy XIV has had some changes, some reworks, the main bulk of its content from the very beginning, you know, before the world got blown up, is still here. You can still enjoy it. If you're paying a sub, you know, you're paying a sub to experience the whole of the journey, the whole of the story, the whole of the world. And it's really cool to see how the world evolves with the new patches and the new content that comes out. One of my favorite changes, which I guess doesn't directly affect the world, but it does, I guess, in some sort of story format, is the trust system. The idea that you could go into dungeons and experience content with NPCs. Now, this isn't just a buffer to, you know, not annoy the player base if you've not done the content before, but it is also an addition to you, because there is a line of dialogue and underwritten stories that actually play out through the NPCs in the dungeons that you'll just miss out on if you just don't do them. And if you're a story fiend, you're really going to want to dive into that, because it really does flesh the world out even more for you. There are also many things outside of like the MSQ, outside of battle content, that people enjoy, one of which being housing, if you're lucky enough to win a housing lottery and maintain that, which is a bit of a sore spot for the community. But if you do get into that kind of territory, you know, you can spend hours just decorating your house, your plot, just kind of working the ins and outs of almost playing a totally different game at that point. You've also got Island Sanctuary, which was kind of not what people wanted at the time, but I still enjoy checking in from time to time, seeing what my animals, my wildlife, my crops, that sort of thing are up to. And I feel like where the game has gone, expanding that content, expanding that horizon, has really helped it in many ways. And I feel like as 14 players, this might fall on deaf ears, and, you know, if you don't like what I'm going to say, that's fine. But I do feel like we just narrow down on the small negatives as opposed to the overarching positives, of which there are many of in the game. Either way, without rambling on too much, I hope this video has given you some sort of context, or at least some sort of clarity as to why, personally for me, outside of all the grey, outside of the lulls, I'm still playing 14. I'm still really enjoying it. Yes, there are frustrating moments. I'm not trying to palm them off, but in the same respect, it's still a game that I'm going to log into regardless. And if I'm being honest, many of you will also. So if this has helped, or if you are still enjoying 14 just like me, then let me know down below in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you in the next video.